Hey, everyone, welcome. Let me move the Zoom thing out of the way. So welcome to Builder Labs. This is our new series where we're going to be walking through practical and actionable use cases that for many of the features and workflows across Builder, across our entire platform and across our various tools that we have here. This is going to be the first in what we hope to be a very long series. And I'm super excited to kind of jump in and really start from the ground up with covering some of the basics here today. We're going to be talking through how to build interactive, dynamic React components using our Builder Develop AI design to code tool, which I know we've been talking a lot about. We've had a bunch of webinars going through the full spectrum of how you can build components, integrate design systems, create fully fledged apps. But today we're really going to strip it down to brass tacks and focus on the core functionality, the code gen, building those dynamic React components just from a basic Figma design, which is really exciting. Ooh. Cool. My name is Tim Garibaldi. I lead our technical success teams here at Builder, which means I work with our largest enterprise customers across Builder on both the develop and publish platforms. It is my job to kind of make sure that people are utilizing Builder to the best of their abilities and fully utilizing and set up for success. So I'm really excited to be talking about this topic today because this is, like I said, one of our core features and one of the kind of basic principles that we kind of build on at Builder. So very, very excited. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Alexis Kulash. How's it going, Alexis? How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, especially with a little kudos from you. No, I'm really excited to be chatting to you all today as well. I sit on the pre-sales side of things. So as a sales engineer at Builder, I'm partnering with folks from all different sizes of organizations to see how they can use our products and how that can best fit into the tech stack and hopefully increase efficiency and get people to where they want to be with today, specifically code generation as the outcome into the application. But really excited to chat with you all. And I think we can just move forward at that point, Tim.
Let's do it.
Awesome. All right. So I'm going to introduce us to the lab today, lay out a diagram of the flow we're hoping to walk through. Then, of course, we're actually going to do the step-by-step lab that Tim is going to take us through with a pretty specific use case that we'll get into during the introduction. Afterwards, we'll have Q&A with both of us, speaking from our experience and trying to answer any questions y'all might have for us. A couple of housekeeping points I just wanted to say while we roll through the agenda is that if you have questions, please feel free to put them into the Q&A tool within Zoom. And then if you are going to leave a chat comment, make sure it's to everyone, if you want it to be to everyone, or if you just want it to be hosts and panelists, that is the default setting. So just keep an eye on that there because it might be gated without you even knowing that. I think if there's nothing else, Tim, yeah, does that sound good? We can get
Yeah,
into the
sounds
flow?
great. Let's go
Okay.
ahead. Let's go ahead and jump in.
Awesome. So got a big bright diagram here. And when we start talking about design to code flows, I like to start from the left-hand side and then work our way towards the ultimate outcome. So that's getting that high quality code generated and into your application. For our lab today, we're going to get started in Figma with a sample design that Tim has pulled. All of the resources that we're using, we're going to make sure to share with folks after the lab so you can follow along and do the same exact step-by-step process that we're going to be walking through today. Now, if you take a look at the left-hand side, within the design tool, little box right there, this is where we have our Builder Figma plugin installed within our Figma instance. And what this plugin is going to do once we've got our design file loaded is invoke our proprietary AI models. And so what our AI models do is prepare the design file, they import the design, and they make the design responsive in Builder's visual editor. Now, a few notes I like to call out about our proprietary AI models that we use. These are fully built and trained internally at Builder. These models are hosted on Google Cloud to ensure privacy and data security. So is the rest of our infrastructure, so that won't be a surprise to anyone who's kind of looked over our infrastructure and architecture docs before. Now, if you take a look, moving over to the right a little bit, once we move into the Builder infrastructure, that purple box on the diagram, we've got our design imported into the Builder application. At this point, we can use Builder's visual editor to tweak our designs if we want to make any, visual refinements, or we can progress to the code panel to actually generate that code in the framework of our choosing. So at this point, when we go into generating the code, We involve some external, finely tuned large language models to help out. This includes models primarily like Anthropic Claude, but we might use things like OpenAI, open source large language models like Mistral or Llama 2. And another quick note I like to cover while we talk about our external large language model usage, we do not train these third-party large language models on customer data. So that usually comes up during questioning, but now that we've got our code generated, we know a lot more about the process. What do we do? And so Tim is going to show us this process, but it's time to sync it back into our application and make sure that we can start running with that locally and pushing up to our application of choice. Tim, I
Yeah.
want to pause here for a second. Anything you see, or would you like to zoom out and add anything on the flow itself?
No, I mean, this is all super helpful. I think you did a great job walking through it. The one thing that I always like to emphasize to our customers and that I'm hoping to get across today is that this is kind of the flow that you go through, but this is not meant to replace your workflow. This is meant to be part of your workflow and be incorporated into your workflow. So this is not it's not step by step, 1, 2, 3, here you go. It's more a tool to help you kind of expedite and save you time ultimately, right? What AI models are really great at is taking like large redundant tasks and cutting them down, removing that redundant part that we don't want is boring and we don't want to spend our time on, so that you're more efficient as a developer. So that's kind of what I'm hoping we're going to be able to get across today, and where we see customers be really successful with this. So really excited to kind of show that.
It's like you've seen these slides before, because this is an excellent segue if you wouldn't mind clicking forward one. Okay. So I like to cover common use cases that we see, because I do think it provides a little bit of a framework around the abstract. And kind of to Tim's point, we see this fitting into a lot of different places depending on the folks we're talking to, the way that they build out products or applications, or maybe even internal portals, right? So, this could be a B2C, B2B, B2B to E application that you're building for an external facing audience. Of course, the internal portals, dashboards, a lot of times I see these using kind of boilerplate templates where our tool can make the generation of new portals with just, changes to the functionality much quicker. And then we get into more of the design system world. For some folks, they've lived in this for years. This is very commonplace, and they have existing mature design systems. I've seen our tool being used across certain teams to maximize the adherence across different application developers to that design system and make their job easier, when they're using components from the centralized design system. I've also seen it be used to create and help expand new design systems. Maybe teams are growing into that, right? And so specifically today, Tim is going to be really taking us through that last concept of creating a new design system, starting from the ground level. But I'm really excited to talk more about that one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and again, as you can see by these use cases, right? It's like we have large multinational companies that have really robust design systems, and you can integrate using develop with those design systems to speed up your processes, or you can build individual components. So again, it's not one size, or what am I trying to say? Like it can be applied to any number of use cases, scale of team, depending on where you are as an organization. You can find ways to integrate develop into your workflow, to find these expedite your workflows and all that kind of stuff, which is exciting. Cool. Well, that all sounds really great, but let's actually see it in practice, right? So I'm going to go ahead and jump over here and get started on the actual kind of walkthrough. So as Alexis said, as we kind of talked about earlier, we're really starting from the ground up here. So we're going to be taking this component or this kind of Figma design and converting it to a dynamic user interactive component, right? So right now, this is just a basic design. I actually pulled this from Figma has a design system. The simple design system has a bunch of components. Should have opened this before. Has a bunch of components, buttons, icons, all kinds of stuff, and as well as larger examples. How do I don't know. larger examples of like, full components. So from there, I copied this form component. It's basically a static image of a design. There's obviously no like interactivity built into it, nothing like that, right? And I'm going to start from absolute scratch, right? We have a doc here going through our quick start, which will help you kind of get started with Builder. I'm going to go ahead, go to React, which is what we're using today. We have this command. I'm just going to go into, and this is going to allow us to create a new project with Builder, with a framework of our choice, fully integrated. So what I'm going to do is we're going to create a new project. For this, I'm going to do Next.js. Again, we have a bunch of different frameworks that are supported. We'll use TypeScript, ESLint, Tailwind, source directory, sure. App router, we can use app router, page router, whichever. Currently, our dev tools does not support TurboPack. It's a relatively new feature from Next.js. It is something we're looking into, but just wanted to call that out. So I want to make sure to not use TurboPack for this. And then we'll go ahead and get building here. This is just using the create next app, building something from the ground up again. So like I said, what we're trying to do is show how we're going from absolutely nothing to creating code components that are fully interactive, all through the like code gen and through our develop product. Let's go ahead and move into our app. Great. We'll do npm run dev. What I'm doing now is just initializing our app. If we go and open it here, now we're going to link this new app that we created to our space in Builder. I already have a space that I use to kind of play around with called BCP Playground. So I'm going to authorize and link my space here. And we are now good to go. If we open this code, you can see, close this out. Great. You can see we've got this generic Next app. We initialized it by setting it up with Builder DevTools. We incorporated DevTools here, and that quick flow prompt also set up a path where we can kind of view and edit our Figma imports, and as well as kind of initialized some of these that integration with Builder and our space. You can see we've also got our Next or our Builder API key here. So that's what's tying this code to this space. So now we have a basic code ready to go, or a basic app ready to go, and we can start building. So all I'm going to do is I have this component, right click, we can go to plugins and pull up the Builder plugin. I actually like to say do command/, which pulls up the plugin. And you can see we've selected our component here. We have two different modes. Easy mode, this is for basic users, and if you don't have if you haven't fully set up your design with auto layout and some of these like best practices that we recommend, it's going to do a good job of importing. But because this is using auto layout and all of our best practices, because these are Figma best practices, right? Like I haven't edited this design, this came from Figma. We're going to use precise mode, which is going to give us the best like pixel perfect import here. Cool. Import. Let's go here. We've got it going. And then we load the design here to see what we've imported. Let me see, I might, make sure to run my local server. So again, whereas if I was as a developer, if I'm given this design, hey, we need to build this shipping component, instead of jumping directly into code, this, I would maybe go and start thinking about how I want to design everything, how I want to lay out my components. Now I'm able to just import directly from Figma. This looks pretty good, right? You can see. I'm going to go ahead and give a thumbs up. We're at Builder, we're very eager for feedback. So we love to get feedback anytime you import something. Let us know if it went well. If it particularly we were interested to know if it didn't go well, so we can always improve, these AI models. But you can see this is looking pretty good, I would say. This kind of matches pretty well to the design. Again, we're using auto layout and all those Figma best practices, so I think we're good to go. But if you actually look here, right, these are just divs, right? These are just boxes, there's text. This is not a drop down. This is not a button. It's just a static design that, we have imported from Figma, which is not very useful as a component to us, right? If there's any inconsistencies in the design, you can come in here and kind of tweak things if you want. But this, like I said, this actually looks good. But we want actually a rich component that's dynamic and that has user interactivity. And so that's what we're going to do in the develop, tab over here, right? We're creating a React component. We're using Tailwind. We're using TypeScript. You can add testing frameworks right now. I don't need that. But I'm going to go ahead and generate code and see what we get. So again, optimizing our workflow. You can see it's automatically generating these hundreds lines of code that are a lot of style, a lot of, the skeleton of the components. Like that stuff is not super interesting as a developer. So being able to offload this and take down, our task from this huge kind of redundant, a lot of repetitive work. Now I'm able to just think about what it is I'm trying to get out of this component instead of focusing on, how to write Tailwind CSS, right? Cool. So we've got our output here. At this point, what I like to do is review what code has been generated, right? We have the ability to prompt and edit, or we can sync this code directly to our code base and tweak it in the code base, right? I'd like to generally think of it as import from Figma. We tweak it in the design here in Builder. Then we run our first code gen and see what gets output. If there's large tasks that, or like multiple places where things can be updated that again are going to be a redundant task, I'm going to use a prompt to try to update that so that I don't have to go through and update everything line by line, right? Then once it's in a pretty good place, we're going to sync it to our code. And in there, I'll do the final little tweaks. And then like check some functionality to make sure that we're, in a good spot. So we're going to go through, immediately some things I'm noticing, like some of this text, I probably want this to be a prop so that I can edit it. Not every component's going to look the exact same, or every instance of this component is going to look the exact same. So maybe we can make those as prompts or props. So I'm going to go ahead and say, can we update? You don't need to be polite, but I think it never hurts. Make text props on the component. Let's see. Let's go through component by component. So we have our input field, which is this full name. We're using an input. This generally looks pretty good. We have our location field here. Again, notice this was an input field, but it kind of didn't recognize it as a drop down. So why don't we go ahead and say, make the location, what is this location field, a select input with options for, I don't know, we can say, major US cities, right? So that's one thing we want to update. We got our text area field. So text area, generally this looks pretty good. Okay. Checkbox. Okay, this is a button. I want to make this an input with a checkbox. Make checkbox input with of type checkbox, right? That looks pretty good. Cool. And then we don't have any sort of submit. So I want to make sure that this has like a submit function. I'm also noticing this is a button as opposed to a link. So maybe we'll do make TNC button and anchor link. Add a submit handler that, let's just say console logs our data for now, and then see where we go. I'm actually kind of stretching the limit. I don't like to overload the prompt with too much. It's actually I'm kind of adding a lot here, but I find it can be easier. We can see how it does, but it's easier than having to like regenerate every single time, which takes some time. But I'm kind of putting myself at risk of maybe skipping a few things. LLMs can sometimes do that. But let's see what's happening. Okay, so we're adding all the selects. Text area field looking good. Again, all of this is code that's being generated on the fly and I don't have to do, which is great, right? Okay, cool. We got our cities. And cool. Now we can go and let's see what this did. So we have that anchor tag that looks good. The checkbox is a checkbox. The location select is a select field. This is great. Oops. I think this is looking pretty good. We've added all of our cities. San Francisco apparently didn't make the cut. I'm based in San Francisco. But that's okay. I grew up in Houston, Texas, so I'll let it slide this time. But I think this is okay. We have our submit handler. This is looking better. Cool. I'm noticing this is an H1. Probably don't need this to be an H1, but again, I'm not going to prompt the entire thing. That's probably something I'll tweak when we do in our code base. But I think we're in a pretty good spot to see at least where we're at, and go from there. So I'm going to go ahead and sync code, copy this, and we're going to move back to terminal, paste this here. I'm in my app. I'm going to paste this command, and Builder's going to actually take all of those files that we just generated and output them. Nope, I think I need to, put it in the source/components. Cool. And we just wrote those there. And now we come here and you can see we have all our components, right? So all of this, I could commit all of this, and this is hundreds of lines of code or however many, that I did not have to write by hand. I've been able to kind of prompt over the past few minutes, right? So let's see what this looks like. I don't have like a great page to view it, but I'm going to go ahead and just delete this, and then we will come in here and say, what is it called? Shipping form. Come on, Copilot. Oh, come on. Pull out those. I was hoping it would pull all those, pull all my props here. I don't want, actually looking at this, I don't want non-submit. I don't think, and we're just going to say console.log, right? I don't think we need an on-submit to be a prop here. Maybe we'll just standardize what that is here. So we're going to console log that. And then, we were tweaking this as H2 or something, maybe an H3, go through and kind of validate it, do these like more fine tuning tweaks here. But I think this looks pretty good again. Where did we go? We're here. Oh man, I was hoping that, there we go. I didn't want to have to type all that out. Cool. And then we're missing a thing. Okay, cool. So this now looks like we've got all the stuff we want. It didn't pull from here, but I'm just going to use whatever the, GitHub Copilot gave us. And let's go and check our homepage and see what we got. Oh, we got to run it. Oops. What are we doing? Use state only works for client. Okay. Let's go back here. I think our shipping form is doing use state because we're using the app router on Next.js, where it's trying to default to server components, and we want to use client. I mean, this is a great example of like importing that design. It didn't necessarily know that we're going to be using a React server component or whatever, but this is something that I think will apply to a lot of my future development. So I'm going to keep that in mind here, and we'll go back and kind of update our process here in a second. But great, you can see here we have our form, right? It's filled with all of our props. We can say Tim Garibaldi, you know, it's got, I'm going to say I'm going to Houston. Let's open up. Hello. Boom. And if we submit it, we're getting all of our data here, right? Cool. So great. I mean, this gave us pretty much what we want, right? Like in a matter of minutes, we've been able to build this fully built out interactive component from just a basic static design. And now we have this component here that we can commit and you know, do whatever we want. Now, the last thing, kind of the last step to this is, like I was saying, is, you know, I'm recognizing there's a couple things that I want to do. Like I want submit buttons to have a handle submit or submit handlers, and maybe I have an API that we submit all of our forms to, right? So I'm going to go in here, and some of these things that I know will apply to, you know, my workflows going forward, and I don't want to have to prompt or change every time. That's a really great opportunity to use our instructions. So I'm going to update our instructions, which I actually wasn't using earlier, probably could have, but you can do anything in these instructions, like, you know, make sure the code is clean, maintainable, concise, you know, make sure it has accessibility built into it, make sure it has, you know, whatever, any of the things that you are, you know, important to you or your team, you would want to put in these instructions. So I'm going to go ahead and say any files with React hooks should say use client at the top. Any forms should have a submit handler and submit the you know, data to our API at, you know, whatever, my site whatever slash API slash forms, right? Whatever your API is, right? And then we can save this. Now, if we generate code, it's going to start fresh, so it's not going to take those prompts that we had earlier, but you'll be able to see at least if we skip down to the end. Hopefully, it'll incorporate those updates in here, so that, you know, next time I'm doing stuff, it doesn't have to do that, which is cool. So now you can see use client is built into it. We have this submit handler that, you know, has a built-in post to our API. You know, looks pretty good. Cool. So that's it. I mean, now, and then, you know, going forward, we'll have a lot more information, or that, you know, we'll be able to continuously improve our process as we go, and you know, have better instructions and make sure that we're using, you know, fine tuning how we use the tool. But again, this is not necessarily replacing our workflow. It's incorporated into our workflow, right? So it's knowing when to use the code gen, knowing when to export to our code base, and doing the fine tuning there, and kind of like going back and forth and kind of tweaking everything as you go. And now, once we have this done, this really starts to play into that design system functionality that we kind of talked about. So Figma, you know, you can have, this can now be a component in Figma. And so what I can do is set up a component mapping as well. When I come here, it's going to say, hey, we noticed that there's a component that's not mapped. You can map this component. I can copy this. That was the thing from earlier, I think, but you know, link it together, authorize it to that space. Your component mappings are saved to your space in Builder. Now we go through our CLI where we're saying, okay, the form shipping from Figma, this Figma component should map to our shipping form in our code base. And it's gone, oh, it's gone ahead and kind of hard coded those values, which is fine. You probably, what you would want to do is come in here and make sure that you have properties, right? Like you can have the title, which would be like shipping info, you know, subtitle. To make, you know, we ship within 2 working days, right? So you'd have these props that are linked to these text fields here. And we pull the title there, and this one we link this is, the subtitle, right? Cool. And then I'm going to exit out of this. And then what we need to do, this is running, come here. I'm going to run this again, and it'll pull those props in and actually set up a bit of a more dynamic mapping. And what this means is that once, let's see, cool. So now you can see it saying, whenever you see this form shipping component in a Figma design, map it to our shipping form in our code base and pull that title prop from Figma, pull that subtitle prop from Figma, or just use these fallback defaults, right? This looks pretty good to me. I'm going to create this mapping in our code. We put this here. So this is in your code base now, shareable across your team. And then now what we can do, we need to publish this, npx builder.io Figma publish, to make sure, again, now that we have this in our code base, let's take our Figma mappings from our code base and let's publish them to our builder space called VCP Playground. Now, anyone in this VCP Playground will have these mappings available. So as long as you're signed into that space here in the plugin, you're going to see this mapping. And then when I come here and export to code next time, it's actually going to, let's run the server. Cool. Now we have our actual component. It has our dropdown. It has all the functionality we built into it. It's pulling from those props. You can see it here in the layers. You can see what those props were and all that kind of stuff, which is great. So now, our designers can start building pages using this form, and we know that it will deterministically output that form in our code whenever we export going forward. And then, as we build more components and set up more component mapping, suddenly we have a design system. Suddenly we have, these full, rich experiences, digital experiences that, our designers are able to come up with, and we're able to output in code in just a couple of clicks, which is pretty cool. Yeah, that's kind of it. That's the flow. That's the, again, we generated all of this here just in a couple minutes, right? And as a developer myself, I know I certainly couldn't have built a full form with all multiple inputs and drop downs and all that in just the same amount of time, up to our full, pixel perfect design standards and everything. So again, saving time and expediting our workflows. So let's go back to our slideshow. Outcomes, right? What did we do? We imported our Figma design into Builder. We used that design to generate ready to sync code that was able to go into our application. We used prompting and tweaking to add interactivity and to make sure that we're getting exactly what we want out of our component, converting that static design into a live, dynamic, and interactive component. And then we created a component mapping so that going forward, we're using that same component across our team, across all of our designs. And then most importantly, we saved time, we saved energy. We didn't have to do any boring, redundant CSS styling. We just got to focus on, using our brains to really make sure that this component is achieving what we need, what our outcomes for these components are, which is the more interesting and more exciting part. So that was it. Alexis, anything else you want to touch on before we jump into Q&A?
No, I was going to say you generated some great code, and we had an audience that generated a lot of great questions. So I'm really excited actually to go through these. There's quite a few that I think are going to be helpful to answer live. Let me go in and just sort very quickly by upvotes, because I know we've got about the 15 minutes left. Okay, here's a good one to start with from Steven. So what are the possibilities with training and fine-tuning the model so that it always nails the design import without post prompting? For this, I mean, Tim, I'm not sure what you've seen. I was going to say, I'll let you take it off the bat here.
No, I mean, I was going to say the biggest tool available to you is kind of using those in custom instructions, and fine tuning your kind of version of how y'all build components. We have a doc that talks about how we kind of inform, and educate our model. We in general are not using, especially for paid customers, not using your content to educate our model. But I would say for individual users, those are custom instructions are what I've seen, or your best tool to do that. I don't know, Alexis, any?
Yeah, I was going to say, and I mean, this is maybe bordering on the edge of things I'm very excited that we'll be talking about further, but there's going to be opportunity within the product to enhance the context from the code base that's being used to generate that code. So to a certain degree, I think that the prompting will become much more granular in what you need to do when the code base itself is serving as more context for how the design should integrate within the existing application. And I know that's probably going to serve as an upcoming webinar, maybe even the next one we do. So I won't talk too much further on that point, but stay tuned. But as Tim was saying, custom instructions can be really handy. Component mapping also, I would just say it can be really handy in increasing that accuracy of conversion without necessarily needing to add in the prompts.
Totally.
Now I'll keep the upvotes going. Okay, so first the designers have to give us components, then we map with builder and sync in our code. And the designers need to use this map component to build the project further. Yeah, so if your designers are using the design components within Figma, we would want them to continue using those design components within Figma because that would have the relationship with the corresponding code component. So as much as you can, avoiding, detaching can help make sure that the adherence to the design system remains high within the system.
Mhm.
Anything else you'd say on that one, Tim?
No, I think yeah, I think that's
Awesome.
great.
Let's see. Now I know, okay, we got that one. Is it possible? I'm just trying to find some good ones. Oh yeah, so is it possible to generate code based on Figma designs for different devices across desktop, tablet, and mobile all in one go so we could get a fully responsive component? Yes, that should be occurring out of the box. We do have Figma best practices to make sure your design is set up to be a fully responsive design once it's imported into Builder, but that absolutely is a part of what we're trying to do out of the box here.
Yeah, and we obviously, this is kind of not the best component because it's mobile sized already, but yeah, that's something that if you're using those Figma best practices using auto layout, you should be generally having kind of a responsive design. That's something also that you can kind of tweak with how in this view, like how you have things set up to make sure they're optimized for mobile or responsive design. And then also finally, that's part of that final tweaking. We exported this to our code, and then we looked at the actual component on a live page, and that's where you're going to get that final tweaking to make sure that it's giving you exactly what you want. So a couple different ways to think about it, I would say.
Yeah. Another question here, can component mapping be impacted if a component is revamped or changed in the design file? So on that front, it can be improved. And certainly, Tim, I don't think did we show even changing like the title and the subtitle? I think you had done that off the bat. That informed the component mapping. So it was then included within the component mapping itself.
Mm-hmm.
But there are also changes that occur in the design files that don't need the mapping to be regenerated and republished to Builder. So it kind of depends on the nature of the change itself.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, I mean, so basically, when you're creating this mapping, like Alexis is saying, like what we're doing is we're saying whenever we see this form shipping component from Figma, output my shipping form component in my code base. If the props are changing, then maybe you would need to update the mapping. But if the props are the same, even if we changed the design, like significantly, and as long as we had updated that design in you know, our code component as well, that mapping is still going to output our actual code component. So, and then again, you know, for that process, maybe you would use the importer to import the new design, update your components in your code base, you know, all that kind of stuff. But it should be relatively straightforward. And again, it's like, you know, compared to having to manually update all these components, it's hopefully going to be, you know, expediting your workflows.
And while we're talking about this, this is an interesting one from Lucas. Does the name of the frames in Figma, like if one is called texture field, impact the result the code generated? I would lean towards saying no if it's just the name of a frame. But I actually have not experimented with that. I don't know if you have, Tim.
No, I haven't either. You know, I don't know. I think that it might take some of it into account. I mean, I think but yeah, I'm not sure off the top of my head. I think that's something we would need to check with our product team. But I think the way, yeah, that the, you know, it's kind of holistically viewing the entire component and design. But I'd be interested to see, like, if we had changed this frame to be like select input, would it have
Hmm.
been known to make that a drop down? I'm not sure off the top of my head, but something we can definitely check out.
Yeah, it's a good question. Now, I know this is one I had asked Jared for you to put in here earlier in the chat, so I just want to cover that one here. So when using the Figma-to-code plugin, you've seen that you have to use it on a develop space inside of Builder. Is that expected? And you probably have actually seen tutorials where the plugin worked with a production space. I'm guessing that production space was probably a publish type space. The long and short answer of that question is, while the Figma-to-code plugin directly correlates to the develop space within Builder, it can still be used with the publish space. Functionality and kind of the look and feel of that's been changing over the last few months, but it can be used with both. You will probably see tutorials and materials where it's worked with both. Yeah, Tim, I know you work with a lot of folks who are doing kind of crossover and hybrid flows using both.
Yeah, you know, and I would say there, you know, we've updated the develop UI to get rid of a lot of the you know, it's more streamlined to only those features that you're really going to need when you're using our develop product. And so we've also seen a lot of our customers, actually, most of our enterprise customers these days will have a designated develop space where they're going to be doing their, you know, code gen and their development, and they're building new components and setting up component mappings and all that kind of stuff. And then once the component is, you know, good to go, they'll register it as a custom component in their publish space, and then their, you know, marketing teams are able to use it there. So they're using the two different space types together in conjunction, and keeping kind of that separation of workflows, because they are pretty separate kind of points in the development cycle. The development of components versus, you know, publishing content.
And I mean, it comes down to the name too, but I like to say that the outcomes differ per product, right? And
Yeah.
so for develop, obviously the outcome is how quickly can we get this design and then get that into code. With the published product, how quickly can we take this design and the outcome potentially is publish, right? Maybe not even the generation of code, but different outcomes between the two. I saw a question here I just want to cover quickly as well. Is your support for Angular as mature as React? So Angular component mapping is supported just in the same way as React component mapping is supported. We do have a lot of folks who come in using Angular. So yes, this is supported. For any of the frameworks where you may see, I'm not sure, Tim, if you could even flip to the develop tab. We do have certain frameworks that have a beta tag, just as we're ensuring that the generation continues to fire as we hope and expect for these more recent additions to that list. But Angular is listed without the beta tag because we have tested that out.
Yeah, Angular is actually a pretty common framework for a lot of our current developed customers, especially for kind of internal dashboards and stuff like that. The other thing I was going to say is, you know, you saw me thumbs up and thumbs down those designs. We're very design or feedback hungry from our customers. So if you're ever using one of these and, you know, something doesn't work as you expect, like, we'd love to get that feedback. But the one thing I would say is like, if something doesn't import as you expected, it's often, because we are using these kind of LLMs, it's similar to like when you're chatting with ChatGPT. Sometimes just rerunning it or trying again or adding a different prompt will unstick it, or direct it back in the direction you want to go, right? That's one of the things. Again, it's like, this is not replacing your workflow, this is incorporated into your workflow. And so use it as a tool. And if it's not giving you what you want, I would recommend trying something different, or prompting, or updating your instructions, right? Or maybe re-importing it and seeing if that, sometimes these LLMs can give you just hiccups or weird hallucinations, right? So definitely, yeah, that I don't be scared to to try again or push back, or like yeah, try to wrangle the tool to get you what you want.
All right. Tim, what do you think? What questions? I'm trying to see most recent upvotes.
I've seen a couple
So
questions about like
yeah,
incorporating into existing applications, and that's definitely, yeah, you definitely should. I mean, every application is a little different, and so maybe there's going to be something about yours that's hits a snag or something. But we do have examples for a lot of different frameworks, and running, integrating dev tools into your app. You know, there you should be able to integrate into an existing application. In fact, our enterprise customers aren't coming to us with no without an app, right? But yeah, sometimes there's different nuances and dependencies and issues, and those are things we want to hear about, so that we can make sure that it is kind of dynamic and adjustable for any application setup. But by and large, you should be able to incorporate it into most of the major frameworks that we list here as supported, and should be able to get the initial kind of setup working.
and I see a few questions around Material UI, and maybe we can even speak about that for a second because there are styling frameworks where, Material UI is a good example. Our web apps use Material UI. And so, yeah, absolutely, this is supported. And I'm not
Yeah.
sure, was this one using? Yeah, Tim.
So
Yeah.
I was going to say, so going back to that first design that we imported, we just did it in regular React. But if you actually, you can add it as an instruction, or let's stop this. And our LLM has access to the wider web, right? And so any like public libraries or frameworks or whatever, like you can prompt to. So you could say, use material, use components, right? Or ShadCN, or some other like kind of open source public library, and it will go in and incorporate that into your components. So you can see here, like we're using boxes and typography and all this type of stuff, right? So yeah, you can do that. Now, when you export this, it assumes that you have Material UI set up in your application, so that's something that you should you know make sure. But yeah, there's think of this as any other kind of LLM you've worked with, like it has access to the information on the web and can use that to inform its output as well.
And I know, oh, we're at time. There's so many good questions. Okay. Please, please, folks, don't be strangers. Hit us with more questions. I hope this webinar was useful. Tim, amazing job as always. Mythical, fantastic walkthrough.
Great. Yeah, no, it was great going through this with everyone. And yeah, we will be following up with some information, and there should be some materials coming out of this with the video and kind of walkthroughs to do what we did. And yeah, we hope you found this useful. And of course, please, like Alexa said, don't be a stranger. Ask us questions. Feel free to reach out. We'd love to hear how you're using the tool. And yeah, happy building.
Happy building.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.